some of the kids will be hesitant and they'll be like, Coach Matt, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, you just saw me demo it. And now you want me to like spoon feed you the information. Like it doesn't, I could do that, but it doesn't work that way. Even if I did show you the information, you still don't have any clearer of an understanding by just watching me do it again. But a lot of kids will go in there and they'll just try to do it. Even if they're doing it wrong, they'll just try to do it. And I'm like, good, move towards that. Move towards making as many mistakes as you can.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight at Delbra.
Hello, everybody. What's up? Welcome to the Everyday Jiu Jitsu podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kwan. The Everyday Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. Today, we are going to discuss the Anaconda. One of my favorite submissions for sure. I think one of the highest percentage of all the headlocks. But before we get started, I just want to let you know that I am sick as hell and I'm going to be coughing and my voice probably sounds nasally and horrible, but hopefully the content's good. If you want to support the show, check out the links in the bottom. You guys know what to do. If you cannot support the show by subscribing to my online academy, please just go to my YouTube channels and just give me a subscribe. That really helps a lot. Okay. The Anaconda. This is a move I think most people learn pretty early in their journey. I teach it to my kids because kids tournaments a lot of them are now allowing headlocks. For some reason, IBJJF thinks kids are too stupid to play headlocks, whereas ADCC is like, fuck your neck, kid. Crank your neck all you want. So we're seeing tournaments like Naga, Grappling Industries. Maybe not Naga, but I know Grappling Industries. These tournaments are allowing guillotines and front headlocks for kids, so I think it's a very high percentage move. And for adults, it's definitely a very, very high percentage headlock. It's, if you'd never done an Anaconda before, I'll just give you the quick rundown. It's basically a head and arm strangle, very similar to a Darce, where you are locking a figure four around your partner's head and arm, right? This would also fall under the category of katagatame. Although there are finishes that are not dissimilar to guillotines that we will talk about in this episode. But normally when we get to an Anaconda situation, we always end up in the same finishing position known as the T position, which we will also talk about. A lot of my studies for this episode come from me finishing Danaher's Master the Move, Anaconda DVD. And Master the Move is an instructional that Danaher has come up where he's come up with this instructional series that really takes deep dives into particular moves. Like I know he has one on Udagatame, straight armbar. He has one on the Anaconda, obviously. And right now I'm working through the Americana. So if you are autistic about jiu-jitsu and you want to go take deep dives into specific moves or situations, check out Master the Move. I think he's got another one on arm drags as well. So I highly recommend the Anaconda DVD. There's always, like, whenever you watch Danaher, there's always like such little gems of gold and diamond. I don't know, here and there. And there's just so many good takeaways in his instructionals. And I'm just, like I've said in the podcast before, I'm just looking for like that one little detail per study session, right? And if you can just get that one little detail, I'll just turn it off. I'll be like, I've had enough. I think that's good enough for today. I'm going to take that to the gym and play with it. And often, a lot of the time, when you take little things away like that, you can go to the gym and use them right away. Maybe it's because I've just, I have quite a bit of experience with jiu-jitsu. It's easy for me to pick things up. Like I can watch something that I see him show, and then I'm like, oh, I know I can do that right away. I know I can add that instantly to my game. And this is no different. There's a move that I added from this instructional that I didn't have before, and it is super effective. I'm excited to talk about it. Okay, so what do we really need for the Anaconda? I'm presuming you guys are entering from the front headlock. There are other places to enter from, but front headlock is most common, right? And basically what we need is we need to bring our partner's arm across their center line. So it's very similar to like a triangle or an arm triangle. We're choking our partner out with their own shoulder. And on the other side, we need closure of the artery through our forearm or our, arm, our bicep. Usually like the pit of our elbow is snug tightly to our partner's artery. And then the other side is pushing the elbow across the center line, which is driving the shoulder into the neck. And so usually we finish in this figure four configuration with our hands. You don't have to finish with a figure four. There's actually ways you can finish palm to palm, but I'd say 9 times out of 10, you're going to be going for that figure four grip. And that's kind of the signature look of the Anaconda, is a figure four grip. Very early in their career, definitely check out Big Nog Noguera. He used to hit anacondas all the time back in his pro MMA days. What we need when we're attacking an anaconda, if I am pulling somebody's right arm across their body and strangling them with their right arm inside, I need to break them to their left hip. So usually we're going to talk about entries, but usually there's some kind of a roll that gets you into this finishing T position. And then from there, you're going to be on the opposite hip of the arm that you're trapping, if that makes sense. So the arm that you're trapping is usually pointing up in the air in the finishing position, and your partner's broken down to the opposite hip. And we really need that arm going across. So that will be your main focus. Generally, if we're talking about alignment in terms of finishing, we want to break our partner's posture by forcing their head into like a unnatural position by walking towards the T position. What this does, it looks awful. When someone's in an anaconda, their head is completely twisted sideways like this, and it's getting more and more twisted. And of course, as we've talked about, the more that you break somebody's posture, the more susceptible they'll be to attacks, specifically strangles in this situation. In terms of breaking their structure, we're taking their arm as a lever and dragging it across their center line into their artery. And so when that elbow comes across the center line, the shoulder pushes into the artery, we get double closure, and we're breaking the posture of the neck. So that's what we need to break our opponent's alignment when using Anaconda Strangles. Let's talk about front headlocks. Let's talk about entries. So the majority are going to be from front headlocks, generally controlling someone with their head and arm from the front head. And then from there, that's where you'll do most of your entries. But there are ways that we can enter the Anaconda from other scenarios. So we can enter from any situation where we have an arm in guillotine and we flip our partner over for sumigaeshi. We can enter from top half guard if we want to dive on our partner's neck from top half guard. It's something that I don't usually recommend we do in like an IBJJF situation. However, for a submission only match, which I'm preparing for a submission only match for next weekend, by the time you guys get this episode, I will have competed in it. It's like a quintet event for Fight to Win Vancouver. So I am practicing like diving on headlocks from stupid positions. I think diving on a front headlock from top position is tactically not the smartest thing to do in a points situation, but in a submission only situation where points are irrelevant, it makes total sense to just dive on somebody's neck. You could do it when they are sitting up in the half guard looking for underhooks. You can even do it in a really cool situation Danaher talks about that I never thought about before, is when your partner is doing a kipping escape. So if you have mounted position and your partner rounds out and starts going to a kipping escape, this is actually a perfect time to jump on the front headlock because their back will always be round and there'll always be exposure behind their head. And also when you're attacking like attacking the back, you can hit a katagatame by grabbing your own hamstring. When you're attacking the turtle, you can fall back into a front katagatame. Maybe it fails, your partner bails through. You could either take the back or potentially you could, if the arm comes across, you can roll them back into the T position. So basically any head and arm configuration from the front headlock will lead you into Anaconda Strangles. And the Anaconda Strangle and guillotines should be used together. So I think to be like a real master of front heads, you're never just going to be a specialist in one move, but you need to be able to link multiple moves together. So maybe I go for an anaconda, it fails, I come up on top, I start threatening arm and guillotine, they defend that, then I go back to my anacondas, maybe they defend that, then I shoot into a high risk guillotine or some other form of guillotine for the finish. And you can switch between high risk guillotines and anacondas. There's a natural dilemma there when you're attacking through the front headlock, because what you want to do when you're attacking the anaconda is pull their elbow away from their body and bring it across their neck. And when they resist this, there's going to be a natural option to go under the neck only and hit high risk guillotines. And so there's a nice little dilemma there between the anaconda and guillotines, but specifically the high risk guillotine, depending on the position of your partner's elbow. So anacondas fit really, really well into most people's front headlock games, I would say. And like I said, to be a master of front heads, you have to be able to blend all of your front headlocks together. Um, and you could look at a Darce choke as an anaconda with the opposite arm threaded deep. So generally, when we're going for an anaconda, we're threading really deep around our partner's arm and around our partner's neck and coming up through the arm. And the Darce is also a katagatame, but it's the opposite that is true, where we're firing our arm deep around around our partner's arm and up through the neck and folding them over. For me, I've always been more of a fan of anacondas, but sorry, clear my nose. But I think that they do both have a natural synergy, and they both are very, very similar because they're both members of the Katagatame family. All right, let's talk about entering on both sides. So I think the most common entry that people learn when they learn this move first is going to be the Olympic roll, right? Like generally, you collapse your partner's elbow, you stick your head in the hole, and you roll through. This works very, very effectively. Thing is that people know this roll is coming, and a lot of time they will compensate by doing exactly the opposite of what you want, which is basing out, opening their elbows super wide, and trying to just like survive the position. When they base out super wide, sometimes it's difficult to roll them through because they've stuck their leg out or they've opened their elbow. And so in a situation like that, it's very possible to just step over the head and roll them to the other side. I think Jacare did this once in one of his MMA fights, and but he finished it like a guillotine by wrapping his legs around your partner, if I'm not mistaken, rather than the classic T position. And that's actually, I think, one of the highest percentage ways to do it is instead of doing the Olympic roll, rolling underneath your partner's chest is just stepping over the head and falling, and you literally end up in the same position. So, yeah, definitely understand that whenever you're attacking anacondas, there's kind of two lanes of attack. There's two avenues, and depending on how your partner defends, you're going to pick one of those options. All right, let's talk about entering the anaconda. Palm to palm entries versus figure four entries. So I only knew about palm to palm entries until I studied this instructional, because I figured that getting a figure four grip before you roll never worked for me. Right. I would always try and get my hands locked in a figure four before I roll, and my partner would just open their elbows and I would never get that arm across the center. So I said I just focus on palm to palm entries where I'm using basically like a cinching movement of my elbows to bring my partner's arm across the center line. I'm sure if you guys know the move, you can visualize what I'm talking about. And then after you roll through, you go from a palm to palm to a figure four. So we're trying to go from a palm to palm, roll our partner through and get to the T position, right? Where we kind of walk into that perpendicular angle, and then we're shooting our hand into a figure four situation. Now, Danaher shows a figure four method that I've never seen before. So what he does is instead of going palm to palm, rolling through and then getting to the figure fouring his arms, he figure fours his arm first. And I'm thinking, okay, how are you going to do a figure four entry when your partner can just open their elbows and basically break the position of your arms? So what he does is he doesn't keep his hands on the outside in figure four. He actually takes his arm to the inside and puts his hand on the guy's stomach. So it's very similar to that position where you're palm to palm and you're putting your head in the hole, looking underneath your partner's belly. But instead of locking your hands on the outside in the finishing position, your arms are actually on the underneath your partner's belly. So you've got one arm around the neck, and now you're usually palm to palm rolling the guy through. Instead of rolling the guy through, you're sticking your outside arm super deep into the figure four, and you're sagging all your weight there. And this is something I've never seen before. This is a move that I've been doing, since I was a white belt. And that was super cool because once I saw it, I realized like I'm going to be able to use that right away. And it's funny when you see those moves on instructionals. If you're one of those people that finds instructionals useful, I think we all do nowadays. Silly to say that there's nothing to be gained from an instructional, but yeah, like I took it to the gym right away, instantly started using it on people, had instant success with the entry, and it is a tight position. Not only that, but there is kind of a secret submission that you can do from this katagatame position before you roll your partner through. And I've talked about it on the podcast before, and that's the front katagatame, the head and arm. What do they call it? Pharmaconda, right? For me, that move was made famous by, it's a wrestling hold that a lot of guys have used for a long time. But for me, the first time I saw that move was Matt Hughes versus Ricardo Almeida when he put him to sleep. And I was like, holy shit, you can put somebody to sleep from just like that front head and arm position where you go palm to palm. In this case, what I realized is using the figure 4 entry, it actually increased my pharmaconda percentage like 50% because your arms are not palm to palm, but they're deep through in a figure 4. It's just such a tight squeeze because you're almost like elbow to elbow. And if they don't roll through, they just get submitted right there. If they do roll through, they roll through right to the T position. And then you can just easily walk into the finishing position because your hands are already locked in figure 4. So I was like, holy shit, this is like a gem. Like this is gold right here from this instructional. And I started using it right away. And it just made my front headlock control way stronger. So when you shoot that deep figure 4, your hand, Danaher talks about having the hand resting on the stomach and how that hand is going to migrate into the figure 4 position as you roll. But what I started doing was I just found a natural grip on my partner's far lat muscle. So I'm just like almost elbow to elbow wrapped around my partner's neck. And it's a very, very tight squeeze. I found when I did the pharmaconda with a palm to palm grip, sometimes I would have success with it. Sometimes it wouldn't be in the perfect position. And I found it difficult to teach to people as well, because sometimes they'd be in the right position. Sometimes they weren't. It was just like more finicky. And my guess is because when you're palm to palm, the space between your arms, the circle within your arms is a lot bigger than when you're in a figure 4, right? So when I'm figure 4, I just feel like there's less guesswork. It's just easier to hit that pharmaconda, that front katagatame. So again, sick. Sorry. The farmer, that's why that sort of secret move, that pharmaconda, is such a good opening move to use before we roll our partner through for the anaconda. All right, let's talk about the T position. So the T position is the position where you roll your partner through. You know, maybe you had like a head and arm guillotine, and your partner's basing out, and you know you don't quite have the purchase that you're looking for, and you're gonna have to change the position. You can put in a butterfly hook, flip your partner over with sumigaeshi, and now you're in this like inverted north-south position. Like you have the headlock. Usually your hands are locked. Sometimes they're not, but better if your hands are locked. And now we're both facing the ceiling, right? And we're in like a straight line. So from here, you're going to be playing this position a lot when you're rallying for head and arm strangles, anacondas, and arm and guillotines. When you get to that position, what you want to do is get to a T position, right? You want to start taking big lunging steps towards your partner's hips, and that's going to change you from a parallel orientation to a perpendicular orientation, right? And what that does is it gives you a good angle to start putting pressure on your partner's neck, which we talked about. Breaking posture makes it stronger. And when we do this, we're always going to have to run into that issue where our partner's elbow is expanding, right? And this, all they're trying to do is improve their alignment to prevent the strangle. So they're trying to get their chest straight. They're trying to, or I should say, they're trying to stick their chest out to make their back more strong and aligned. And they're trying to prevent their head from getting folded into an unnatural position. And they're trying to expand their elbows so that we can't drag their elbow across the center. And the number one way that we can combat this is by using our leg, throwing our leg over the elbow and forcing it across the center line. And then again, this is going to give us the finishing position. You don't need to finish with your leg over your partner's elbow, but this is just a good way to set the strangle, and then you can walk towards that T position as you're finishing. What should our elbows be doing when we're finishing from this T position? The bottom elbow is going to be pulling into our ribs, and the top elbow is going to be pushing into our partner's, basically towards our partner's groin area, right? And we want to make sure that we have a strong figure 4. We don't just want our fingertips in there, and our hand as well. This is a super important detail. Our hand needs to reach for our partner's shoulder. So it's just like a darce where we want our hand as high as it can possibly go, right? We want that figure four, that hand that we're grabbing with the figure four to come as high as possible in the finish. So we're reaching for our partner's shoulder. So all of these things put together, going to the tee, keep walking towards the tee to break posture, use your leg to throw over top of the elbow to break the positioning of the elbow, pulling the bottom elbow inside and pushing the top elbow towards, and then bringing our hand into a figure four position. These are all finishing mechanics of the Anaconda. And for those of you who are good at Anacondas, you know how high percentage the move is. Like, I find the move very, very forgiving for me. When I get to that position, it's one of my favorite submissions now. And a lot of that is just because of the little details and things that I've learned through this Danaher instructional. Very, very good content on that instructional. Okay, some common problems. I think one of the most common problems you're going to run into is the elbow. So partner's elbow's opening. We already talked about it. We have to throw our leg over that elbow. We have to make sure that we prevent that elbow from opening. Another thing we need to do is we need to keep our partner's head inside this hole, inside our armpit. If the head comes out and bridges on top of our chest, and both you and your partner face the same direction, generally it'll be like up towards the ceiling. It's going to totally neutralize your Anaconda Strangle. So you got to kind of prevent your partner from getting their head onto your chest. You must keep your partner's head inside your armpit. And ideally, when we're finishing the Anaconda, we're kind of perpendicular, not just in the T position, but in the directions that we're facing. So I will be facing the ceiling, for example, and my partner will be facing the side or the side wall. So we're kind of like this, right? I'm making like an X position. We need to be facing 90-degree different angles to one another's orientation. We cannot be both facing the ceiling, or else the move doesn't work. Same thing with the darce. So another thing that a lot of people run into is it's just like that, you know, when you day one jiu-jitsu class, you see people finishing rear naked chokes, and they do it like this, right? They lock the figure four, and then they leave their hand dangling there for their partner to grab. They try and put it behind the head, and quite often what will happen is the person will grab their hand and pull the hand down, and they've presented the end of a lever, right? And so the proper way to do this is to hide your hand and to use a palm to palm method, palm to back of your hand method, where we never do expose the end of the lever to our partner. We can just shoot that figure four through. And the Anaconda is the same way. And so what is recommended is, instead of going into this white belt style finish where the end of our hand can be grabbed by our partner, instead of reaching for our bicep and then trying to finish the figure four, go from a palm to palm situation and then invert your hands so that both your palms face you, and then shoot your elbow towards your partner. So instead of me reaching for my own bicep and making the figure four, I want to take my other hand and reach for my partner's shoulder. And this is again another awesome detail that Danner talks about. Sometimes you will have to finish. You know, we're just calling it the white belt method, where sometimes you do have to finish where you present your hand and you go into the figure four. That does happen. It still works as long as your partner doesn't grab your hand. But the better way to do it is palm to palm, invert your hands towards yourself, and then shoot your elbow forward and reach for your partner's shoulder. I play with both methods, honestly. One thing I noticed is when I'm throwing my leg over my partner's elbow, if I can throw my foot in front of my partner's far arm, then it makes it very difficult for them to grab my hand with that arm, because my foot is essentially blocking it. So I started throwing my leg over the arm, over the elbow, and over the far arm as well. So like even into the far armpit or over the far bicep, and that covers the arm. And now it's very difficult for them to hand fight me from this position. So that's something that I started doing as well. But either way, it's like, it's one of those things, you know, we can watch instructionals all day long. We can, you can watch your instructor teach the Anaconda, you can drill it, but you'll never get good at hitting it live unless you're literally ecoing it. You have to go in and do it live. And that's really all eco is, right? Like I've really come around on this eco thing. I think where a lot of people call it eco, now we're just what the eco guys are calling it is just CLA, right? The constraint led approach. Eco just means like you're doing something live against live resistance. And really that's the only way you're going to actually be able to problem solve. Like you can learn the mechanics, you can practice the move, you can drill it, but only when you put it live against resistance will you be able to like work on your problem solving and combining different things and dealing with problems as they come up. So for me, I could absorb all these details into my game immediately because I've already spent so much time in these positions. But for somebody who's never done it, like yeah, you're going to need to put in a lot of work into these positions: the T position, the front headlock position, um, the inverted north south position. Like you're going to have to spend time in these situations to figure out what to do and how to not lose your opponent. Uh, Conversely, how to escape these positions, how to not get strangled. So you really need to make sure that you're putting yourself in these positions. And we've just been sparring the shit out of all these positions. I actually love starting from the inverted front headlock. The inverted north south, inverted front headlock, whatever you want to call that position. I've been starting students from that position and just sparring from there, and it's a lot of fun. It's actually a cool position. You can back roll in the mount and finish guillotines, or you can go to the T position, or quite often you'll both scramble up to your knees and then you're fighting again from a neutral front headlock. And you can see when you do this that you can just keep your attack chains going from here with constant anacondas, guillotines, go behinds, whatever you're going to be doing from that position, right? So I love front headlocks. I think it's one of the best submission systems in fighting, and I think that it's crazy that in IBJJF kids can't do it. All right, last situation I want to talk about is finishing from the closed guard, and this will look similar to a guillotine situation. So when we're finishing from a closed guard, generally we have a figure four around our partner's head and arm, but it's not necessarily the figure four like we talked about where we're looking inside the hole. And this is probably my favorite anaconda situation now, is a figure four before we roll. But if you can lock a figure four around your partner's head and arm and you stand up and throw your legs around your partner, so you'd kind of like if you imagine you have someone in a front headlock, you figure four your arms and you step towards the arm side, then you can pull a closed guard essentially. And this is one of the tightest positions to finish an anaconda from. It sucks being caught in this closed guard anaconda. You could even argue that it's tighter than the tightest T position because you're using your legs now and you're wrapping your legs around your partner. Very, very difficult to get out of this. So that's another position that I'm trying to find in my training, is get to the closed guard anaconda where we can wrap our legs around our partner. So we could roll our partner through for one side, we could roll them through the opposite side, or perhaps we can just stand up, lock our legs around our partner, and finish in the closed guard. So yeah, definitely check out that instructional, guys. If you're on my online academy, I just did a whole last week on the anaconda position, going over some of my findings and some of the biggest takeaways that I got from this instructional. And it is awesome. Really, really love the anaconda. Oh, plus for a short guy, like I'm 5'8", but my arms are like 6'1". Like, how many inches is that? 72 inches? I don't know. I live in Canada. We don't do the imperial system, but we kind of do, which is kind of funny if you think about it. Like we still measure in feet and pounds, but when it comes to like measuring liquids, we're using like milliliters, and we truly use both systems up here. But I think my wingspan is like 72 inches. Anyways, long story short, I got super long arms for my height, and so yeah, like anacondas really work well for my game, and they can totally work well for your game too. You should definitely check out that instructional. Okay, so now I want to shift gears and just talk about mistakes. Why are they valuable and why they suck? Obviously they suck because they hurt your ego short term. And we just had a tournament down in Washington State. It is the Revolution, and the Revolution is the biggest tournament in the Pacific Northwest. We had a bunch of kids compete. I didn't compete. I wasn't there, but we had a huge kids team and they did really awesome, right? And so I always tell the kids, like, when you go into a tournament on competition day, if you just make your focus to make as little mistakes as possible, like rather than going in and trying to like win, trying to do what you want to do, you're going to go against better and better fighters. And it's a lot of it comes down to like shutting down what your opponent wants to do and just avoiding mistakes. And if you can kind of fight that perfect fight and avoid mistakes, often you'll do really well. And obviously, it sucks to make mistakes when you compete. It sucks to see the kids make mistakes when they compete because they feel really disappointed. Often they'll cry and whatever that, however kids act. But as much as mistakes suck when it really counts in competition, I always tell the kids mistakes are so valuable. And when we're trying new moves like, anacondas and things like that, whatever I teach kids, I teach them bolos, I teach them leg locks, I teach them all types of stuff. Some of the kids will be hesitant and they'll be like, Coach Matt, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, you just saw me demo it. And now you want me to like spoon feed you the information. Like it does, I could do that, but it doesn't work that way. Even if I did show you the information, you still don't have any clearer of an understanding by just watching me do it again. I'm like, what position are we starting with? They're like, we started in the front headlock. I'm like, okay, good. You know where to start, right? Try to submit your opponent. They're not even going to fight back. Just try to submit them with try and lock your hands in a figure four and submit them. And then you'll see them try to work it out. And they're like thinking about it. A lot of these kids, my son is like this, very, very hesitant to try something they don't know. Right. But a lot of kids will go in there and they'll just try to do it. Even if they're doing it wrong, they'll just try to do it. And I'm like, good, move towards that. Move towards making as many mistakes as you can. And I brought the kids in one day because I can't remember what technique we were using. We were focusing on something that day that some kids were having trouble with. They're like, Coach Matt, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. And I'm looking and I'm like, yeah, but you're not even trying. You're just like sitting there with your partner chit chatting when you could be using this time to try to do the move, right? Do you know the position we started in? Okay, you know where to start. So just try to go from there. Try to mimic what you see. Try to make as many mistakes as possible. And this is what I tell them. I say, try to make as many mistakes as possible. And then they look at me and they're like, what do you mean? Like, why do you want me to make mistakes? That doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, well, obviously I don't want you to sit there and like do bad jujitsu. Like the goal is not to make mistakes. But when we're doing skill acquisition and you're trying to do something that you've never done before, the best way to learn how to get good at it is to learn what not to do. And that comes from making mistakes. So whenever we're in the kids class, one of my biggest mottos now is make as many mistakes as you possibly can. Right. And then you'll know what not to do. And then they're like, oh, okay, I understand why coach is telling me to do that. Right. I get it now. But again, I'm trying to get these kids over this, whatever you want to look at it as paralysis analysis, where they're like, I don't know what to do. So therefore, I'm not going to even do anything. And that doesn't do any good. Right. You have to make sure that they're just trying and failing. I'm like, see if you can get your partner to tap out from this. Like lock your arms, lock a figure four around your partner's head and arm, see if you can get them to tap. And then you start to see things happen around the room. Obviously, there are kids that just get it instantly. That's always going to happen when you have a group of like 30 kids. But yeah, like I always encourage them, like this gym is our laboratory. I'm the scientist. And you guys are my little scientists as well, but to some degree, you're also my little experiments. And my job as a scientist is to try and get you guys to show me a particular behavior. Like I'm trying to see if I can upload this information into you and get a certain result out of you. And you guys are doing your own little experiments. This is a good place to fail. We want to make mistakes here. Obviously, when it's time to get ready for a competition, we're training to win. We're training to win the gold medal. We're training to, hang on to a lead. We're training to shut someone down. We're training to find a submission. Whatever it is we have to do in that match, we're trying to win because the medal's on the line. That's a different situation. But in the gym, we should be looking to make mistakes. We should be not afraid to fail. And this is a huge part of our growth, right? But it sucks. It hurts our ego to fail. But that's why you see the best grapplers in the world, like Gordon and whatnot, like they're always putting themselves into positions where they can get submitted because they want to fail. Because when they fail, they're like, okay, I've been that deep into the submission and I failed. I got tapped, but I realized what I did wrong. Or maybe, someone comes in from out of town and they're rolling with you. There's stories of this, people rolling with Gordon. And he basically puts himself into submissions and they're like, holy shit, I submitted Gordon Ryan. But really at the end of the round, like he's the one who won because he just downloaded all of their favorite finishing details. So let's say there's a situation where he has to fight this someone later in a tournament. He now knows what that person likes to do when they finish an armbar, finish a back triangle, or whatever position it is. That's truly having no ego, right? Being able to tap and training to your training partners, even though you know you can beat them. That's an important thing to do, right? And I think that we could all adopt that strategy a little bit more when we're talking about just skill acquisition, not necessarily preparing for a competition, but skill acquisition, building new skills. Put yourself in positions where you're going to tap and like fail, make as many mistakes as you possibly can. Don't look at them as failures. Just look at them as necessary steps towards competency in any particular new skill. All right. Uh, the so like I said, the fear of making mistakes. What these kids do, they have this fear that they're doing things wrong, and so they freeze up and they don't want to do anything. That's always going to just hinder growth, right? The discomfort of not understanding what to do and avoiding trying new things. That's going to hinder all of your growth, and it creates hesitancy in competition, which usually comes from a lack of confidence, right? We hesitate in competition because there's a lack of confidence, or we don't know where we are in the competition. We don't know what situation we're in. We don't know what to do. And so we sort of freeze up. And then this is when your opponent can take the offensive cycle. So that fear is always going to stop you from growth. Instead, when you're in the gym, just go for it. And if you get tapped, what's the worst thing that happens? You get tapped. I mean, it's not even that bad, right? As long as you don't get injured, I just look at it as all good things. And when I was like a up and coming blue or purple belt, my goal was to win my roles because I was naive and I was young and I didn't know what the goal of training was. But now I'm like, man, I'm just gonna put myself in like horrible positions and see if I can work my way out. I don't care if one of my blue belts taps me. I really don't. And that mindset has really helped me because that is what's going to lead you to growth, right? Skill acquisition is all about experimentation. Like I said, I always tell the kids, like, this is my laboratory. I'm the scientist. You guys are my experiment. You guys are my little experiments around the room, but also you are experimenting. You are seeing what works. We're trying to do this. This is our hypothesis. Let's see if we can make it work. Let's see if we can prove it right. Even though the gym, the laboratory is all about experimentation, the competition is about winning. So we have to set clear goals. Okay, guys, now we're going into competition this weekend. The goal is not to make a mistake. I want to win. I want you guys to win medals. You guys want to win medals, right? Yes. Okay. So now we're not trying to acquire skills. We are trying to acquire the skill of being a better competitor per se, but now we're really shifting our focus to just winning. Let's try to go out there and let's win. I don't even care if you get a submission. I just want you to have a better score than the other person when the time runs out, because nobody cares how close you were to that Anaconda Strangle or that guillotine or whatever. People care about who won the tournament, and that's really what matters at the end of the day. And I've talked about a lot in the podcast before about finding benefits in your failures, like when you make mistakes. So when you lose a competition, don't just look at it like, man, fuck, I lost the competition, like I suck. Like that defines me. Don't look at it that way. Just look at it like, okay, I don't want to repeat the same mistakes I did. I've had competitions where in between divisions, I ate too much food or drank too much water. And then I went out and I performed like shit in my second division and I got smashed because I felt tired and felt like I was going to puke. And I was like, okay, well, that's a lesson to learn. Don't do that again, right? Like don't get super full before you go into another competition. Wait until you're done, then eat. Or I got to the venue too late and I didn't get a good enough warm up. Oh shit, I should have gotten there like 45 minutes earlier. Things like that. Oh, I wanted to stand with this guy. I should have just pulled guard. I got taken down anyways. Like those are the types of things that you can use next time and try not to repeat those same mistakes. But I will say this. So before we get out of here, I noticed it's kind of funny when I cook at home. So this is now I'm switching gears to cooking. When I cook at home, I notice, like, for years now, I've noticed, like, I don't know what it is. What I'm just like shittier. I'm a shittier cook at home than when I used to go and work in a professional kitchen. And I didn't know why this was the case. Like, I would make mistakes in the kitchen at home, and I didn't know why I would do that. And even some of the things I would like cut corners, like the way that our fridges are built at home. Generally, the vegetable crisper is on the bottom, and so your raw product generally has to go above your produce, which in culinary arts, like in professional kitchens, is a huge no-no. We have usually a separate rack or a separate place to store meat altogether so that there's no chance of contamination. We call it the hierarchy of foods. So basically what it is your proteins, your raw meats, they are supposed to go below any ready to eat food, right? If you have raw chicken above salad, there's potential for the raw chicken to drip onto the salad. And so the hierarchy shows that the vegetables should be on top and the meat should be on bottom. You guys understand, right? So at home, the way that our fridges are built, usually the vegetable crisper is on the bottom, and so the raw meat must go above the vegetable. So right away, I noticed I'm like, huh, well that would be a no-no in the professional kitchen, but at home we don't think twice about it. Okay, and then I'm like cooking along at home, and I'm like cutting corners and making mistakes, and my food never turns out as it's not that I don't make nice food at home, but it's not like I'm trying to impress someone, right? And I kept wondering why I would do this. I didn't know why I would do this, but just my food was just like not the same. Um, the only time the food would be of to that level is if I was cooking for like my friends and family. Then I would be like, okay, it's time to make it's time to try really hard. And I realized the reason why I think I'm doing this subconsciously, might I add, is because if I'm only cooking for myself, I really don't care if I make mistakes. And so I think my mind was just subconsciously making these mistakes as like an experiment to see what would work and what wouldn't work. It's almost like without even knowing it, when I'm at home cooking, I'm trying to make mistakes because I want to see the result of a bad mistake, if that makes sense. Like, it's okay if it's for me because I'm not trying to impress anyone. It's not like I'm doing like a dinner for my wife and her family or whatever. If I was doing that, I'd be like, okay, it's game time. Like, I don't want to make mistakes because there's people who are going to be eating this. But if it's just me eating something, I'll be like, well, I don't care if I cut something a little too big. I don't care if this is a little bit rustic or if this isn't, totally refined. It's only for me. Like, I'll eat anything. You know what I mean? But I can observe what happens to these products in these environments if I do things differently than I would normally do by the textbook, if that makes sense. So subconsciously at home when I cook, I make little mistakes here and there, and I noticed that I was observing these mistakes and looking at them, like gaining information from them, much like an experiment. Whereas if I was going to go down and work at the Marriott like I did for 10 years and we had a banquet for like 500 people, it's like, okay, it's game day. Like, you better not make mistakes now because people are paying money and you're going to be judged for your product and whatnot. But like at home, nobody, if it's for me, nobody judges me. So what do I care if something is a little bit darker on one side, or what do I care if this is a little bit more seasoning than normally I would want, or whatever. It's okay to make mistakes because at home that is my lab. When I'm testing things, I don't mind if things come out a little bit different than how maybe they should. I want to see if I adjust things, how does that affect the final product? So just something interesting that I noticed. I observed this recently throughout the field of culinary arts, and just how making mistakes is, I think, a good thing, especially when it's just you, or if it's in a laboratory scenario, like at the gym. Guys, when you go to the gym today, try and make as many mistakes as you possibly can, and then reward yourself with a couple of rounds where you're like, okay, I'm going to try and win this round. I want to see if I can, I want to see when I try and when I try not to make mistakes, can I avoid these certain mistakes? But long story short, mistakes are a good thing. Mistakes are the path to growth and gaining information. And, we definitely shouldn't be afraid of mistakes. I believe that we should move toward mistakes at the right time. And when it counts, avoid as many mistakes as possible. All right, guys. So that is my episode on the Anaconda Strangle and the value of mistakes. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them at the bottom. If you want to support the show, please review the show. Leave a review if you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever, Apple Music. I don't use Apple. I'm not an Apple guy, but wherever you get your podcast, if you can leave a review or comments, it really, really helps. Please ask any questions. You can also reach me in the links below and support the show at the links below. And I hope you guys enjoyed the show. So I'll see you next week. Remember, Everyday Jiu Jitsu Podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. See you guys later. Bye.